And I say I'm a recovering people pleaser, but when we
Right.
are operating as people pleasers, we're not really thinking about if God is going to be pleased. We're thinking about, are people going to be upset? What are
Mm.
people's expectations? Who am I going to let down if I do this? And this could be something that we need to do for ourselves, but we're always thinking about somebody else's opinions, thoughts, expectations, and desires for us.
Welcome to the All Things Beloved podcast with me, Christina Patterson, where we speak with real women about real faith in a real God. This is a safe place to have honest conversations about faith, life, relationships, purpose, and well, all things beloved. Thank you so much for joining today's conversation. Be sure to share with a friend and enjoy the show.
Beloved, and welcome to the Beloved Women podcast called All Things Beloved, where we chat about faith, family, ministry, life, and well, all things beloved. I'm super excited to introduce our first guest here today, Iris P. Bryant, who was a conference speaker at last year's Beloved Women's Conference. Iris P. Bryant is a writer, speaker, educator, podcast host, and worship leader. She serves as a district level instructional coach, providing support for high school English and social studies teachers. She co-authored the book, How I Got Over, with 4 other inspiring women, and loves coffee, milk chocolate, and all things pumpkin spice. She desires to help women maximize each moment and season they encounter by showing them God doesn't waste any of our experiences, whether good or bad. Iris and her husband, David, reside with their 4 children and 1 grandchild in Eastern North Carolina. Welcome to the show, Iris.
Thank you, Christina. I'm so excited about being here today.
So that was your, official bio. I always like to give our guests the opportunity to share in their own words who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a wife, a mom, a grandmother, and I'm one of those. I'm an old school, new school grandmother because everybody was saying, "What are you going to be called? Gigi, Mama, Mima?" Like,
Right.
no, I'm going to be grandma. So I didn't
Okay.
change the name
You
because
said it.
um I just had awesome relationships with my grandmother, and I hope
Okay.
to repeat that legacy with my little one, Jewel. Her name is Jewel, and I had the opportunity of choosing her name,
Okay.
and
I
she
see the
is.
connection there. I was
Do you
like,
see
was
the?
that a coincidence? No.
It was
Okay.
not. And she was born. She was born about 3 weeks before we went into lockdown. And I tell my
Mm.
daughter that she has been the best thing to happen. One of the best things to
Oh,
happen since
yeah.
March of 2020. So
Yeah.
she's been our bright spot during this quarantine life.
And she's
So
absolutely adorable. I saw
thank
the
you.
picture. Yeah. She can't get cuter than that.
Yeah, so she has changed my perspective on lots of things and
Mm-hmm.
brought a whole lot of joy into my life. But aside from being a mom, a wife, and a grandmother, I am an educator. Been in the school system for 22 years. Seen a lot of changes, a lot of
Yeah.
children who've grown up to be great adults and productive citizens. So have great joy in that part of my life. I'm a child, meaning I have parents that right now our roles have somewhat reversed.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm helping with caregiving with my parents who are just wonderful, God-fearing, loving human beings, and I'm so blessed to be able to enjoy this phase or this season of
Yeah.
their lives. I'm learning so many lessons. So those are all the things that I do. And I guess all the people who I am, because I feel like I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I always say that as women, we wear so many hats. And you said your granddaughter's name was Jewel, and I was making the connection. And what I
Mhm.
meant was you have a podcast and retreat called Hidden Jewels. That's the
Mhm.
name of your ministry. And so that's why I made that comment. So can you tell us a little bit more about the Hidden Jewels podcast and retreat?
Absolutely. With the podcast, and I always say that I started a podcast journey um, in 2017,
Okay.
and I didn't know who I was talking to. It was just one of those things like, oh, people are podcasting, people are doing Facebook lives. Let me order some equipment. Let me podcast. So I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it. I just knew, like, I felt like I had something to say, and this seemed to be the way to do it. And it was a total flop and a total
Okay.
blessing because I
Okay.
didn't have a purpose, didn't have an audience. I was just talking. So I took a break, did a lot of praying, like, God, who am I really supposed to be speaking to? And I've always been around people, and I shouldn't say always, but in the last couple of years, since entering the space of um, inter interacting with other women who are speakers or writers, and I've been connected to people who have been very intentional, like they know exactly who they're speaking to. And I remember I was in a restaurant with two other ladies who we consider ourselves accountability partners. So we meet quarterly. We were
Yeah.
meeting face to face, but now we meet via Zoom. And we were having lunch, and they both have very a devoted audience. Like, they know who they serve. And I said to them, I want to know who my people are. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know who I'm supposed to be talking to. Like, I know I have a message. I know that God expects me to deliver this message. I know He's giving me an assignment, but who am I supposed to be talking to? Like, who am I? And I kept saying, who are my people? And there was such a frustration. Like, I wasn't angry, but I was just really frustrated.
Yeah.
And one of the ladies said to me, like, if you were in a room full of women and everybody was crying, whose cries would you respond to? And
Hmm.
Christina, just like there wasn't, I didn't have to think about it. Like, I didn't have to
Mhm.
like, oh, well, I wonder who. And I
Mhm.
just described the women I would respond to. And I said that I would respond to the cries of the woman who was always smiling, but she was crying because nobody even recognized that she was crying, because she was just trying to
Mm.
hold it all together. I said I would
Mhm.
respond to the woman who was crying because she was always pushing other people, pushing and supporting their vision. And she was crying like, okay, Lord, when is it going to be my time? And I just went through
Mm.
all of these lists of women, and every woman that I said I would identify with was a woman who was broken and was
Mm.
trying to hold it all together, because that's what was expected of her. And the lady
Wow.
looked at me and she was like, Iris, those are your people. And
Mhm.
then I would love to say that I left that
Hmm.
restaurant and I was like, okay, God, I'm ready to go. I wasn't, because then I had to reckon with my broken pieces. Like,
Mm.
what areas have, even, past the brokenness, but in what areas have I been restored in, but I haven't talked about?
Mm.
And that came
Oh.
through people asking me. Like, one particular lady was doing a coaching call with me, and she said, I've been on your website, but I still don't know who you are. Like,
Wow.
I feel like you can talk about pain, but what has hurt you? And she
Yeah.
listed these things. She's like, have you been hurt in church? Were you hurt in a relationship? And I said, all of the above. Like, everything you mentioned. Check, check, check. So that was last summer, where I had to
Okay.
just sit and say, okay, this is the deal. I've
Mhm.
been broken in a relationship, so I can help those women. And I've been
Mhm.
broken because, like, my life story, I am an adult adoptee, and
Mm.
I have held that and have always tried to be okay,
Now
but I
wait,
haven't.
explain to us what's in it, what do you how do you define an adult adoptee?
Okay,
You
so
were
I was
adopted
adopted
as
as
a
a
certain
child. I
age?
was adopted when I was
Got you. Okay.
an infant, a
Got
very
you.
young
Okay.
infant. Um, and now there's still things that I have, like, there were things suppressed because I
Okay.
just wanted to be okay. I wanted everybody to be okay. So
So when you
those,
talk about your parents that you're now entering the role as a caregiver to, these are your parents that adopted you.
yes, and
Okay.
it's
Okay.
interesting in saying that I've picked up some terms like I refer to my birth family as my family of origin.
Okay.
And I have been connected with them, have an awesome relationship with siblings. But
Okay.
when I speak of my parents, those are the parents who adopted me and
Got
loved me like I was their own.
got you.
Hmm.
Got you. Okay. Okay. But as an adult adoptee, there was some brokenness that you had to work through before you started to help other women with their brokenness.
Absolutely. And I actually had to admit that
Mm.
that happened, that I was
Yeah.
broken. And I want to show you, and I didn't know this was going to be a part of our
Yeah.
question,
Let's
but
go.
this was something that I did, and I remember you speaking about it in the conference last year. But
Yeah.
this was a vessel that looked normal,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a moment with me and the Father. With I broke this vessel and I glued it back together, and I used the gold paint
Yeah.
to illustrate, the beauty in the brokenness. And
Right.
as I went through this exercise, God was doing that to my heart and with my life. So those
Mm.
places that were broken, he has shown me the beauty in it. And that in spite of the breaking, in spite of every situation that happened that seemed negative at the time, he
Right.
will get the glory out of every single piece. And that's the whole gist of the retreat
Yeah.
and the podcast, just helping women find purpose on the other side of pain. Because when you're going through it, when you're experiencing
Mm-hmm.
it, whether it is, a child with an unexpected pregnancy, which is why Jewel has been such a blessing. You don't see
Mm-hmm.
the blessing of that. You don't see the joy that that child is going to bring when
Mm-hmm.
your child is telling you that they're expecting. You don't see that.
Yeah.
You don't see the blessing of having joy and being able to say, okay, I have two sets of parents. I have two sets of
Mm-hmm.
siblings. You don't see that when you're 12 years old and you're wondering what you did to cause someone to not want you. So it's refocusing and taking the power away from every lie that the enemy has spoken. That's the whole
Yes.
purpose of the podcast and the retreat as well.
Oh, wow. I love that about reframing it as you in order to help you to heal, but not acting like it didn't happen at all.
Absolutely.
And I think one important thing that you said was that you had to admit first and foremost that the brokenness was there and wanting to help the woman. I love the visual that you gave, wanting to help the woman who has a smile on her face, but she's broken inside. And to
Mhm.
me, that represents that unwillingness sometimes, or feeling like you can't um, express the brokenness that's there. Like you
Uh,
have to put on this facade for everyone else. And where do you think that comes from? Because I'm sure in your podcast and as you prepare for this retreat, you're finding that your people, that the women you were trying, to
mhm.
connect with, there are a lot of us. It's not like this select group of women, but I can see how most women would relate to that example you gave of putting on a smile because you got to
Mhm.
get through this day. The kids got to get to school. Bills got to still be paid. Like there's a
Mhm.
legitimate life that has to still be lived, but
Absolutely.
there's this brokenness. And
Mhm.
it can be easy to just ignore it and just kind of push through. And
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that it's not affecting you and still growing. So
That
where do you think that comes from of not being able to do that first step of admitting that the brokenness is there?
I think, Christina, that we are conditioned to wear it all. We're
Mm-hmm.
conditioned to think that we're supposed to carry it all, and I think that we view saying I'm okay, or I'm not okay, or I need help, or this is hard, or I don't even know how to navigate this space. I think we've been conditioned to believe that that shows weakness. Like I can't ask for help because I'm supposed to be able to
Yeah.
juggle this. If I say that Jesus is my Lord and I say that he is concerned about every part of me, then if I say I'm weary, or if I say that this is too much, or if I say this is heavy, then am I actually saying that I haven't given it to him, or that I don't
Mm.
trust him? So I think there are a lot of things that we're taught, or we even observe, having those strong women in our families who did it all. Like
Yeah.
my uncle was laughing last week. He's in his 60s, and he was
Mhm.
talking about when he was born. He said, I'm sure that my mother was out working in the field like when I was 4 days old. And he was
Mhm.
like he was joking, I think, but he
Yeah.
was just saying that he never saw her stop. And I think
Mhm.
that's what it's been ingrained in us, that you just have to be okay. You have to get over it. And then the other thing that I know is sad, and I know it's a part of my journey, not being connected to people that you could trust your vulnerabilities to. Like,
Mm.
you're
Absolutely.
guarded. You feel like, if I tell this sister that I'm struggling, then what is she going to think of me? I
Mhm.
want to tell her, but is she still going to see the God in me if I tell her that this is hard, or that I'm struggling? So I think there's a lot of things that we've accepted that were not of God, and we've used those things to keep us from experience the true freedom that he has for us.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that you brought in that faith piece, because as a Christian woman, it brings in a whole nother dynamic when there's some incorrect theology there of thinking that if I have this, if true faith in God, that means I have to be all the way together. When Jesus says, if you're weary, come to me, where the
Absolutely.
Bible says, that God gives strength to the weary and so it's like, there's this expectation that God has that you are going to get tired, and you're
Right.
to come to me. It's not like he expects us to be able to soar, like eagles without him. And
Absolutely.
and that we have to come to him to get that restoration and to fill our cups back up.
Mhm.
But I also like what you said about kind of our generation of women comparing ourselves to past generations of women and all that they did.
Mhm.
And I've caught myself saying, God just don't make them like they used to. I can't do all of what your grandmama and great grandma and all them did. That just ain't gonna happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think that there's a part of us that incorrectly like glorifies everything that they did and make the assumption that they were okay just because they did it. And I think that's not true. I think if
Wow.
we could go back and and really be honest, they would be like, I'm not okay. But they, like a lot of us feel today, might not have had the support like you talked about,
Mhm.
the ability to feel like they could be open, a safe space to say that. Where I
Mhm.
feel like our generation, we still have those challenges and those barriers, but it is becoming, to me, more acceptable to kind of move in that direction and just be like, I can't do it all. I'm not, and I'm
Right.
not. I'm just not. And if you think something about it, then you keep them thoughts over there, because I am going to have to take care of me. I'm the one that has
Absolutely.
to carry this.
Mhm.
Which kind of leads me to a recent podcast that you shared about overcoming as a people pleaser, which I thought was really interesting. Can you tell us, well, how do you define people pleaser,
Okay.
and how did you find yourself in that space?
Um, I define a people pleaser as someone who puts the needs, the wants, the desires, the expectations of everyone else
Mm,
ahead of their own needs, wants, desires, and expectations. Something as simple as, for me, um, people telling me as a child, "You're going to be a teacher." And I never, and I laugh about it now, I never even thought about doing anything else. I love
yeah.
what I do. I'm
Mhm.
passionate about it. But like from the first day of kindergarten, I never had a desire for any other career. Like
Hmm.
I would get stumped at career fairs because we had to make three choices. I'm like, okay, I guess elementary teacher, middle school teacher, high school teacher. um, and I think you're always thinking about what are they going to say. That's the other part of it. You're always
Mhm.
thinking about what are they, whoever they is, what are they going to say?
Mhm.
What are they going to think? And even wearing the disappointment, because in that podcast I talk about um, being peer pressured to skip church by my
Mhm.
cousins,
Mhm.
and I was stressing because I didn't want them to see me as this church girl, and I
Mhm.
didn't want to have to deal with the consequences because I never went back in the sanctuary. Like I walked out of the sanctuary for a legitimate reason, but I didn't return.
Mhm.
And I was so happy that my cousins weren't going to make fun of me because I had
Mhm.
this reputation for being a church girl because we went to church all of the time. And I put their opinions of me above my parents' expectations of me because
Mhm.
of how I wanted to be viewed. And you know, I could trace things back to even before then. But
Mhm.
even in an incident outside, I knocked a firefly out of my cousin's hand. It was just a childish thing to do. And I
Mhm.
spent a long time, like years, avoiding him because I thought he was still mad at me
Oh
because of
wow.
that. So I'm like replaying this in my head. Why did I do it? What was I thinking? Like he's cool. He's never gonna like me again. And
Wow.
that never, I'm sure he never thought about it again. So
Mhm.
when you are a person um who gives in to people pleasing, you don't
Mhm.
know the word no.
Mm.
Everything is yes, 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 because you don't want people to be upset with you.
Mhm.
And it took a season because I didn't even realize that was an attribute. I didn't realize that's what was happening. But when I saw it, I was like, no, because I want to please God. And oftentimes when we are, and I say I'm a recovering people pleaser, but when we
Right.
are operating as people pleasers, we're not really thinking about if God is going to be pleased. We're thinking about, are people going to be upset? What are
Mm.
people's expectations? Who am I going to let down if I do this? And this could be something that we need to do for ourselves, but we're always thinking about somebody else's opinions, thoughts, expectations, and desires for us. And that's irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that, and if we bring back into the faith aspect, we are called to love others. So
Mhm,
there can sometimes be this misunderstanding that to please everybody
mhm,
means to love everybody. And that can kind of feed into that people pleasing when we have that incorrect theology. Like if everyone's happy with me, then that means I'm loving correctly. And it's like, well, no, people are sinners. They might be offended and you didn't do anything wrong. You know what I
mhm.
mean?
That's so true. And we look for that approval. Like we
Hmm.
want that approval from them. I agree.
And and so how um did God help you get out of that people pleasing mentality?
You are invited to Beloved Conference 2021 this August 6th and 7th. Our 2-day online event is a weekend filled with speakers, worship, fellowship, and more to replenish busy women with the love of Jesus Christ and the truth of God's Word. Join us to find rest for your soul, peace for your mind, and hope for your journey right from the comfort of your home by registering today at belovedconference.org.
I'm often blessed by whatever information I take in. So
Hmm.
reading the Bible and then
Hmm.
reading other books.
Hmm.
Um, I was a part of an internship group for a podcast that was devoted to recovering people pleasers, which
Really?
was Grit and Grace with Amy
Okay.
Carroll and Sherry
Yeah.
Gregory. And that was the first time I heard the phrase a recovering people pleaser. And I was
Okay.
the assignment I was given was to go through readers comments, like when readers had emailed the show, and I'm reading these comments. I'm like, that sounds like me. That sounds like me. And I don't think I realized how much attention I had given that until I had that assignment. And I was like, wow, this is me.
Yeah.
And that ministry helped walk me through that phase of deliverance. And in our community, we think deliverance, you think it's somebody slapping oil on your forehead, and that's not always it.
Right.
But I really saw myself, and I was able to walk through that process by listening to their podcast and reading their books. Exhale, that was very, very instrumental in me getting on the other side of that people pleasing mentality, because it had been such a huge part of my life for so long that I didn't even realize that it was a problem.
Yeah. What would you tell to the woman who's struggling as a people pleaser now?
I would tell her that, and I would love to be able to pinpoint that exact verse, but there's a verse that says, do I seek to please men, or do I seek to please God? Because if I seek to please men, then I'm not a servant of God. And I think that word, it resonated with me. I meditated on that word, because at the end of the day, I wanted his well done and not the well done of other people. And I had spent so much time seeking others' well done. So I would love for that woman to adopt that verse, meditate on that verse. And when they're in situations where there's a war with peace within, like, do I do this because I don't want to disappoint them? Do I do this because I don't want to let them down? Or do I do this because that's where my heart is, and that's where God's approval is? It's to make sure that in any decision that you make, that you follow peace. And if you follow peace, you'll get further and further away from pleasing others. I guarantee that.
I love that. Yeah, because even as you feel like, if I please others, I'll be happy, but you still know there's like that inside tug that's like, I probably really shouldn't do this, but I don't want to upset them. I don't want to disappoint them, but when you're really, following God in the matter, there's this peace that comes with it, even if, people do, become disappointed.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for that. You share that your favorite verse in the Bible is Romans 8:28, that tells us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And your most recent book that you wrote, that we talked about in your bio, is called How I Got Over, and so there's this theme throughout your ministry, and even just in our conversation today, of God using our brokenness for his good, And so I wanted to ask you, what's your personal story of seeing God take something broken in your life and use it for good?
I think my personal story is where I am right now, like in this moment. I never thought that my adoption would be something that I could see God's hand in. And it's something that I haven't wanted to talk about, because I always felt that it was a subject of shame, because I wasn't a child that learned like early on. Like there was no sit down conversation of, I want to talk to you. Okay. So, and because of, I guess the generation and that time period, I was born in 1973. So there was still a lot of things where we don't talk about it. Like, this is our business, but other people knew.
But
so I didn't know until I actually, and this is like where I am in the journey now, but I actually found my adoption papers when I was looking for a savings bond. And I was I think I was 11, and I'm
Okay.
getting the years together, but I was
Okay.
not, I was under 13.
Okay. But you're still old enough to,
Yeah,
have
yeah,
comprehended what was going
yeah.
on.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
that you weren't told that and you had to figure it out on your own
Hmm.
without.
Right. And hearing it, like I heard it on the playground. I heard it in church. I heard like I remember being in church and there was a note being passed around that I was a Cabbage Patch Kid. And during the
Okay.
time, the Cabbage Patch Kid was a doll that you adopted. But I didn't know
Oh,
that that was the truth because nobody had ever told me.
right. So when
Um,
you saw that note, where you just thought people were just talking, you didn't pay it any
mhm,
attention, you
mhm.
just
I
kind
paid
of
it attention. I paid it attention, but I just didn't have the truth with it.
hmm
I didn't believe it. Like I just
right.
thought there were a bunch of mean kids. Like
Kids, yeah.
they're just mean.
Right. Because kids
Um,
can be mean.
they can be, but
Yeah.
they were mean truth tellers.
Yes. Yes.
uh, so it wasn't anything that I talked about. And even reuniting with my family, I felt the shame of I'm happy when I'm with them, but I really can't talk about it because I'm supposed to be grateful that I was adopted and I'm supposed to be grateful that I had this
Mm.
life. And now I'm trying to connect or reconnect with a family that I wasn't raised with. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
this
Pull.
constant pull between,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what is or where is the joy? Where is the joy? Because it was always this war.
Now you're 11
And
and you find the paperwork.
I'm 11 to find the paperwork. I unite with the family when I'm 35,
But do
36.
you tell your parents? Do you say, "Hey, I found this paperwork. You guys didn't tell me," or do
It's a
you
whole nother
just?
episode.
Okay, all right, all right. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm,
but it's
I'm
it's
leaning
it's
in, like
it's okay.
I'm trying to
But
get the context because I
yes,
know we're going to get to the good part, but I'm
so
trying to
yes,
like contextualize.
I
Like,
I did tell them I found the paperwork.
okay, okay. I didn't
And
know if you kept it in until like
I
you know.
told them that the night that I found it.
Okay, because I
And
was like, "Oh, that's a
no,
big burden
I didn't
for an
hold it
11-year-old to
for
carry.
that long.
Ooh, that's heavy."
But Christina, when I told them, even though they didn't say anything negative, I saw what in my 11-year-old mind was that I had hurt them because I brought this to
Mm,
them. Now I'm 11 years old,
right,
but
right.
it was a lot of I wish we had told you.
Okay,
I wish you didn't find out this way. But as an
right,
11-year-old, I'm feeling the weight of I hurt them.
right.
That wasn't the reality, but that was the truth for me at that
That's how
moment.
you received it.
That's how I received it. And because
Hmm
of what I thought, I didn't talk about it again. So even
Because you didn't want
to
to,
them,
you
because I
didn't
didn't
want
want to
to.
hurt them. I didn't want them to feel like I was ungrateful.
Yeah.
And it that was hard because I had one friend that I've known all my life. We would sit and talk, and she would let me imagine this life. She would always listen to me. Like I
hmm
imagine who my parents were and I imagine
Okay.
what kind of life I would have had. And I
hmm
guess that was my way of escaping because I
Mm,
just felt that if I talked about it, if I asked about it, it would be a sign of disrespect.
got you.
So when I met my birth family or my family of origin in 2008, I was afraid to tell my family because I still felt like this. See, here's this people pleasing thing again. Do you see the
I'm
theme?
seeing the connection. I'm seeing the
Yes,
connection between your people pleasing and your journey to healing. And
absolutely.
how that was kind of a block. But again, you're 11, you're in your early 30s. Like you don't know what you don't know. You're just operating on what you think is true at the time. But I want to ask before you get into that, what led you to reach out to your family of origin?
My children. At this point,
Really?
it was things I saw with as a parent
Mm-hmm.
that I felt I was I was parenting out of deficiency. Like there
Okay.
was, and I believe that I was not giving them my all because there were so many holes in me.
First of all,
And
that's a whole episode right there. That's a whole episode about parenting and the need to be healed yourself so that you can raise whole healthy kids as well. So
Absolutely.
I understand what you're saying. Okay,
Mhm.
please go on.
And that's really what did it, because I would
Mm-hmm.
be there were so many things that happened from the time that I found the papers until that moment. And I remember the moment my children were interacting with each other, and I actually saw my daughter
Mm-hmm.
behaving in a way that I behaved as a child that wasn't right. I mean, my son was trying to help her, and
Mm-hmm.
they were actually they were supposed to be cleaning up their rooms, and everything he did to help her, she would, I don't need it. And she was being very independent. She's trying to be a big girl, but I saw myself in her. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'm going to have to deal with me so that I can be a better parent, because I didn't even
Yeah.
have it's like there were so many areas that I felt I could have been, and where I'm speaking from now is not from a place of regret or a place
Right.
of um but just I was standing in the doorway to my son's bedroom, and
Mm-hmm.
I heard how my daughter was talking to him, and they were little,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, ugh.
Yeah,
Because
I've had
I
those
was
moments. Yeah,
yes,
where
and
my the same thing with my daughter, and I don't know how to handle it because I'm like, she got that from me.
she got it from me.
She got it from me. So how I'm gonna sit up here and discipline her, and she looking like, "What you be doing, girl?"
Yeah, and Christina, the thing that was so I'm gonna say painful in that moment
Mm-hmm.
is she was acting like me, but she was acting like the hidden me. Like people didn't see that side of me. They
Mm.
saw this glorious, we're all going to heaven, everything is beautiful.
Saved,
They
sanctified.
saved, sanctified, filled with a mighty burning fire.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what they that's what they saw. But her
Mm.
lashing out, that's how I handled things, like when I was like angry, or like I was like I compressed everything until I couldn't hold it in anymore. And then I would explode. And that's what I
Just
saw.
coming
And I was
out.
like, oh, whew, we got to get this in check. And that night, and this is so hilarious to me, but that night I knelt down to pray. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, Lord, you know what I need to ask you for, but I ain't ready. So help my heart. I ain't ready. So just help my heart. And I said, I was like, I can't even ask you.
I can't tell you how many times I prayed that prayer. Like, God, I'm afraid to ask because I know that this means more challenges coming my way.
Mm-hmm.
Please be gracious and merciful to me,
Mm-hmm.
God.
I couldn't even articulate that. Like, Lord, you know, but
You
I
know.
ain't ready. I ain't ready. And the next night, praise God, I was
Mm,
ready. And I asked him
mm,
to just do a work on me. And there was a
mm.
period of fasting
Yeah,
and praying. And he spoke so clearly. And I knew that I had to find truth. Like I needed to know. And to me, it wasn't about like anybody embracing me and say, we missed you and we regret. It was about just knowing,
yeah.
just knowing. And in probably a year later, I had met my birth mother, and then over the space of time or span of time, I met 3 older brothers, and I have
Mm.
a wonderful relationship, like 13 aunts and uncles, and my
Oh,
wonderful
wow.
grandmother, who was only in my life for 9 months, but they
Okay.
were 9 blessed months, or 9 blessed months. She's very special to me. So he answered the prayer, and it's still something that I'm still walking out, and
Yes.
that's the whole message behind how I got over, because that was a painful place. It
Mm-hmm.
was a season that I didn't see how anything good could come from it, because there were
Mm-hmm.
so many nights that I went to bed crying because I didn't have answers.
Yeah.
And he has allowed um, me to see his glory, his hand in that. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
that is how I'm able to tell people that there is purpose in this pain. There's something on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to go through this season or this process, but there is a promise waiting on the other side.
Oh,
That's what drives me,
yeah.
what
And
I've seen him do.
I'm so inspired and encouraged by your testimony to let God into your heart, and the spark being, wanting better for your children. I think as moms, we want them to always have and do and be better than us, and I feel like by you courageously opening your heart to allow God to heal your past, you have propelled your children to a great, glorious future because of your faith, and you're passing on a legacy of faith. Because what a testimony for them to see you walk through that. What a testimony, you know what I mean? So they know that my mom's God is real, and I can do anything. And it's starting there with your children, but now just overflowing to all the women that you connect with your ministry. Like, is God not good? Like,
it's so good.
I see that gold in the cracks, and it is shining through you, Iris. And just thank you so much for being vulnerable with us today and sharing your story. And I know that it is going to lead a lot of women to take a pause, look inside, and want to, start a journey of healing, not just for themselves, but their family and their children and their children's children and their children's children's children, and everyone that comes into contact with them. And that's what happens when we allow God to infiltrate our brokenness and show us that, that he can make beauty from ashes. And what final word of encouragement would you say to that woman who's in that place of brokenness, and she's at a point where she can realize that she's broken, but healing and restoration just seems impossible?
I think that the Lord deals with me a lot in stories or moments from my life, and how he allows me to see his hand in moments. And I remember several years ago, I was traveling to work, and I really wanted Chick-fil-A for breakfast this morning. And that meant I had to leave a few minutes earlier so that I could get to work on time. And I went and got my chicken minis. And as I was headed to work, I got on the interstate. I missed my exit. And in missing my exit, I had to travel quite a bit of distance out of the way. And the interesting thing about that day is I had a meeting. So it wasn't like I could just, walk into work and just pick up, like everything was wonderful. But me being late would mean that I would miss a meeting. So I'm in traffic and I'm panicking and I'm saying I should never try to get this breakfast, and just blaming myself because I knew that I was going to be late. I knew that my whole day was going to be ruined because of this, missing this one exit. When I got to work, I had the time wrong. So instead of the meeting started at 8, it started at 8:30. I got to work like 8:15. Everything was beautiful. And he ministered to my heart that even when you feel like these moments are wasted, or even when you feel like you've missed it, or you feel like you are not going to be in time, I haven't wasted anything. You're still going to arrive at the appointed place in time for what I have charged you or assigned your hands to do. So what's the point of, my Chick-fil-A in the missed exit? And I'm not making light of whatever your affliction may be, or your struggle, or your place of pain. But I guarantee you that if you focus on where he's taking you to, and a lot of times it's not easy to see that if you're thinking about this traffic, or you're thinking about what I was supposed to do, or who let me down, or who didn't stand by me when they said that they would, who walked away. You think about all of those things, it's easy to get in the moment and feel like you've missed it. But I promise you, if you continue to focus on what he promised you, and there are things that he showed you from when you were a child, there are things that he placed in your heart, there are things that that you have been called to do, you haven't missed it. And once you arrive, every experience that you've encountered, whether good or bad, as in Romans 8:28, he will allow you to see that that moment, the ugly one, the painful one, the one that you didn't think you were going to see the light of day in, that moment was working for this moment. And you'll be able to help another lady, young lady, a man. There's somebody that you'll be able to help because you continue to drive and continue to focus on that destination. Just trust him in every moment of your life.
I love that, Iris. Thank you so much for that encouragement and for just really just being open and sharing your heart with us today. How can our beloved sisters connect with you outside of this podcast?
Thank you. You can connect with me at irispbryant.com. The podcast Hidden Jewels is available on all of your podcast listening apps. So you can connect with me in either of those places. And I thank you so much, Christina, for having me here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Iris. And we will get Iris's all of her links, how to connect with her and her book and her podcast in the description of this video. I hope that today's video encouraged you. If it did, will you do us a favor and share it with a friend, because you just never know who might need some beloved encouragement today. As always, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, be beautiful, be blessed, and be loved.